Hello, Steve White, Steve White 79. Well, I'm getting towards the end of my Amityville movie marathon. I'm down to the second last movie, The Amityville Murders, A Haunting on Long Island. This one is interesting. I'm kind of disappointed by it. I was expecting it was going to try and really tell the full, real story of what happened and be up to date and get everything right and not sort of, yeah, no. Yeah, it's. I mean, the thing I enjoyed about it the most is that they had some of the actors from Amityville 2 come back to play characters in this film. They had Burt Young playing the grandfather now instead of the father, and they had Diane Franklin playing the mother instead of the daughter. So that was nice, but they didn't have Ratanda Alda, I think that's the name is, who played the mother in the first film. She should have come back as grandmother. Instead, they had what is her name? Lani Kazan playing the mother, the grandmother, and it's weird. They try to write some variations of the story, like that this house actually belonged to the grandparents and has been the family for generations, and the grandmother has some sort of knowledge of the paranormal, and that she sort of gave them this book that they would read from, and they were basically summoning powers from the dark side or something. And I'm like, I'm fairly sure none of that happened. And the house, they moved in the 60s. They were there for 9 years before they died, before they were killed. And the youngest kids grew up in the house, but the older kids grew up somewhere else, and they moved there, and they remember living somewhere else. So it wasn't the family house. So there are things like that that aren't quite right. And just some really baffling things, like right at the end, they show the real people, and it really shows up just how much Ronald Jr. and Sr. do not look like the actual people. And they put up some text, including the whole mystery of how no one woke up during the murders. But yet in the film, they showed the father wakes up and attacks Butch, and he punches him and knocks him back into the bed and then shoots him in the back. Had that actually happened, there would have been some sign of violence, and it didn't happen that way. They show one of the boys waking up saying something to him like he's the boogeyman, and then rolling back over and going to sleep. I guess that could have happened, but they showed Dawn went to the grandmother's house, and then in the middle of the night decides to leave and go, and she tells her not to go, but she still goes, and she finds he's killed the family, and she goes and hides in a room, and then she just puts on her pajamas and lays down the bed, and he comes in and kills her, and it's like, none of this is consistent with the story, but actually doesn't tell anything different. So they don't really try to establish their own mythology on that level, but they still do things that don't line up with what we know happened. So it's kind of a bit confused. Overall, the production's good. I mean, the house, they went with CGI. So in some ways, they sort of recreate it and it looks interesting, but other times, like, they seem to have had a set built with the side of the house, but then they seem to be using CGI, and the bottom of the house doesn't match up with the driveway, and it looks like the porch is like floating. But then you see them, one of the actresses later, standing on what should be the porch, but there's no steps. And I'm like, how hard is it to build a damn porch? So there are just a few things that are just like inexplicable about this. And some parts they do seem to recreate sort of accurately. There are problems with the house. Also, the layout doesn't quite work, and one of Butcher's walls upstairs in the attic is brick when they weren't brick. And I don't know, were they running out of room and they just had to build the set on the side of the studio and just said, let's just go with the original wall or something? I mean, it just looks like things just don't quite add up in this. But I mean, overall, it was okay. The acting was good. The production design, except for the house, was good. It felt like it was in the 70s. They did a good job with the costuming and the hairstyles and everything. But just a few little things just didn't work out and just didn't quite make sense. There's some sort of, not quite a subplot, some sort of element of the story where the father was working with someone who was taking bribes and getting money, and the house is robbed and the money goes missing, but then Ronald has it. I keep getting confused with the names. And it's confused what they're planning to do, and in the end, one of the last things is we see Burt Young, some cop hands the money to some guy who puts it in the car and then drives off with Burt Young in the back, who's the father, and it's just a bit much. And the very last sort of scene is we see the real estate coming in the front door with George and Kathy Lutz telling them, oh, I want to show you how the other half lives, the other half of Long Island lives, and then the very last shot is of a fly on the window pane of the attic window looking out. So now I'm going to watch the 2005 remake of the original, which is even further away from reality or the film anthology. But this one was closer, but still, like I said, there are parts that they strayed, and then other parts they tried to sort of show and portray what actually happened, but it just couldn't seem to make up its mind about what it was. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the Amityville Murders if you've watched it, and I don't know what to make of it. I didn't not like it, but I just was like frustrated by it and confused by it the sort of whole time. Like, why did they go that way? Why did they go that way? Why are they just going this way? It's like they couldn't seem to make up their mind where they were going. So